outro. All right. We are live on Facebook and hopefully YouTube. And we're working on Instagram. Here we go on Instagram. All right. So we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. So welcome to the Energetic Psyche. Oh, sorry. My computer just told me, oh, you're live on YouTube. Yeah, I know. This is new, folks. So just hang in there with us. This is our first live on all these different channels. So I appreciate your grace. As I was saying, welcome to the Energetic Psyche, a podcast hosted by yours truly, Dr. Adrian Campbell, where we talk about real life, challenge assumptions, and explore different ways of being in the world. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for our first monthly live in 2025. Starting tonight, Dr. Cacky Mellor and I will be co-hosting a 2-hour live event every month exploring a different topic. Our hope is that we can move into conversation and answer some questions, both from each other and the audience. So everybody watching, sincerely, we really want to be in conversation with you. So any questions you have, any thoughts that come up, please feel free to share it in the comments. We can't promise we're going to pay attention all of the time, but we will do our best. And we'll ask that you just be patient with us when it comes to responding. So this month, we're exploring radical self-love and exploration, and basically how we can create big change in the world through love and authenticity. Very important. So welcome. Hi, Dr. Cacky. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, Dr. Adrian. I am so excited to be back in conversation with you and hopefully some of our community members, and to be kicking off 2025 focusing on radical self-love, radical love.
Right? Yes. So I was telling you earlier, I came up with this topic before any of the we'll say before the president changed out. How about that? Because this is kind of my soapbox, like radical love, right? Like being love, pushing love into the world, love, love, love is kind of my shtick. I know sometimes I'm a little rough around the edges. I say the F word a lot. I was in the military, but I really, truly believe that love is the answer. Like I really, truly do. Because if everyone felt loved and felt safe, I really think that we would eliminate all of the issues in the world, because that's what everyone's after, even if they don't know it enough to admit it, because it's always covered up with so many different things, right? Anyway, we'll get into it. But that's why I came up with this topic. And then as the last couple of weeks occurred, I was reflecting and was like, oh my gosh, like how perfect is this topic for what's going on in the world right now? Because really, what we need is love. I mean, always, but I think even now more than ever.
Yeah, bringing it back to what is most essential, most foundational. And I don't think that we can oversell how impactful love is. And I know that it can be a very loaded word for folks. There's a lot of different definitions, a lot of different experiences that get packaged in here. And as that comes up in our conversation and for folks as they're listening, I really want to welcome and invite those perspectives in, because it's so important to expanding our perspectives on what we're discussing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And just tagging on that, we're going to talk about love from our perspectives, right? Which just in our notes, there's so many perspectives for us to come from. And so it'll just be interesting to see what comes up. Because like I said, it's kind of been my soapbox for many, 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 many years. Any of my clients could tell you, we talk about it all the time, but just in different ways, right? And so tonight, really what I wanted to focus on is radical self-love and what that looks like and how that creates a radical movement in the world. I think one of the things that Jungian psychology kind of gets criticized about is that it's all focused on individuation and inner work, and it's all about you. But even Jung says, I was just looking this quote up the other day for a different research project I'm working on, but even he says that, like, if you go too interior and you forget that you're connected to the outside world, you're not doing the work correctly, right?
Point. Yeah,
right.
You lost the plot.
Yep. And if you over-identify with community and the communal man, then you're not doing the work either. So it really is about finding that balance, getting to know who you are, doing your inner work, and really figuring out where you exist in the world, I think. And through the work that we do on ourselves, we will create change in the world. Like, guaranteed. Like, I have so many beautiful examples that I hope to share tonight. But it doesn't always have to be. I'll back up for a second. I think sometimes when there's really shitty stuff happening, right? I remember, well, it was probably 4 years ago that I was having these same struggles. But anyways, a lot of my friends are activists, and they go out into the world and they do protests and, stuff like that. And that's never really been my thing. I'm a really sensitive soul. Again, I know some people are like, what? But it's true. I'm very sensitive, emotionally, energetically. People that know me really well are like, well, obviously you cry all the time, Adrian. We know this. Yeah. But being in those types of environments is damaging for me. And it really impacts me in a negative way. So I was struggling to figure out, like, how can I create change and, like, be present in what's going on and support the people that I love that are out there doing this stuff, without hurting myself, and without numbing out or dissociating or pretending everything's fine. Because that, I think, is really important to talk about too, that when we're talking about focusing on yourself, we're not talking about ignoring what's happening, or pretending everything's fine. Right. Yeah. It's more really realizing that when you focus on yourself and you live in a way that's authentic and true and comes from a place of love, you radiate that out into the world. And so this is years ago when I was having this problem, through a lot of prayer and meditation and self-reflection, and probably some therapy. I realized the way that I can show up is to just do my absolute best to be the person that I want to see in the world, right? Like Gandhi's quote, be the change you want to see. And it's not just through your actions that are outward, but it's your actions inward and towards yourself as well.
Yes. Thank you for starting us off from this perspective. And as you were speaking, I was reminded of a passage from Black Elk from the Oglala Sioux. And to paraphrase, he was talking about how interconnected everything is in the world, and that we are a part of this larger picture, that the community that we identify as our community is part of this larger intersecting circles of communities. And we are not the most important person in the world, any individual one of us. However, we are going to see and experience the world through our unique lens and perspective. So in your life, you are the most important person, because without your life, then your perspective, your lens into the world ceases to exist. So from that perspective, when you embody and live and practice radical self-love, you are transforming worlds. You are transforming your world, and you're transforming how you are showing up in the world in a very radical and profound way.
Yep, absolutely. Makes me think of like, I often go back to the ocean as a metaphor for our existence in this world, right? And the grand ocean, we're all a part of it, even though we are not it. Yeah. And I think like when we think about ourselves energetically, when part of the ocean changes, right? Whether it's like just the tide pool may not shift the entire ocean, but if every single section of that harbor changed, it's going to affect that part of the shoreline, right? And then if more sections of the shoreline changed over time, it would start to impact the ocean. And I think sometimes we can get into these frames of thought where we're not that important. We can't do that much. But it's just defeatist, you know? And like, I've just never been that way. I can't imagine that we can't do something about something. And the thing is that every single person matters, you know, their own individual perspective, their own individual work, it all matters and it all makes a difference. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the things I've noticed in the world today. I won't even say it happened in the last 10, 15 years, to be honest, but probably the worst in the last 5 to 10 years. I'm going to blame the internet because I can. But basically, when I host events online, people will RSVP and then just like not show up. And when I follow up, they're like, oh, well, I didn't think you would notice. I notice every single one of you that doesn't show up, right? If I invite you to something, it's because I actually care to invite you. Even if I invite 80 people, believe it or not, I actually care about every single one of you and hope that you'll be there. Mm-hmm. And I think that we're so bombarded with image and information and even each other, but in a very superficial way, that we start to feel unimportant, or like we don't actually matter as much as we do to each other.
Yeah. And I think that that's such an interesting lens to bring into the conversation, because you're talking about activism and folks who are really focused on the ocean, on the larger picture. And I think that sometimes these things have a lot in common, even though the way that they present can be a little bit different. People signing up, but then dismissing themselves, right, and their own importance, or the value that they'd get from the experience if they did show up. Like where are they prioritizing their time instead? Similarly, in a different perspective, I feel like focusing fully on the larger picture can have some very significant consequences for individuals. I talk a lot about activism and caring for our communities in particularly the pre-internship course that I teach for psychology and applied therapies majors. Because if you are in any caring profession, you need to care about your communities and know what is affecting them. But if you're doing that without being aware of how doing this work is affecting you, you are going to burn out. Right. And we need you to be here with us right now doing this work. And some of the most meaningful work is to take care of yourself so that you can become a sustainable part of this chorus, this community movement of caring and showing up and wanting to be an agent of love and compassion.
Yeah, because compassion fatigue is real. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I helped build a course on it for Veterans Yoga Project. It's absolutely real. And, you know, from a veteran perspective, like it came up. So I just started yoga teacher training today, and I am so excited. And it's with Veterans Yoga Project. But one of the things that came up is that we are often taught in the military, no pain, no gain, right? Push through, make it happen. And I think that even outside the military, a lot of caregivers, especially if it's your profession, and I don't mean that like your job, but your profession, like it's your calling in life, you almost do it out of habit, right? Because it's just, especially when the archetypal energy comes in and really starts flowing through you, you will push yourself right into burnout and past it until your body is like, and we're done now.
Right.
Yeah. So it's really important to practice self-awareness and self-love from that perspective as well. And that's where, like, you know, Jung was talking about, is that balance between the focus on the outer and the inner worlds.
Right. Yeah. And tending to both is necessary.
Yep. And then just tagging right off of that. So also when we focus on only the outer world, we very much risk projecting our own shadow onto the other.
Yes.
We very much risk not only avoiding taking care of ourselves, well, I won't say not only, because avoiding taking care of ourselves, but part of that is bringing awareness to our shadow elements. And so when we only focus on other, right, it's always their fault, or they did, or it's someone to blame, right? Blaming doesn't fix anything or make it better. You might be like, but it makes me feel better. I mean, okay, maybe for like a second, sure, whatever. I'm not going to take that away from you, but like long term, absolutely not.
Right.
And when we focus so much on the other, we can easily become exactly what we are directing all that blame at.
What we're so afraid of or rejecting of within ourselves, because it's a mirror. When we're talking about what's going on in our internal world, it's a mirror of what's going on externally and vice versa. That is really key insight that comes from Jungian perspectives. It comes from many Eastern wisdom traditions.
You know what song's in my head? We are the world. We are the people, because it's true. Like that we are each other, right? Yeah. So being careful to avoid that. It's one of my favorite quotes, Leo Tolstoy, and I put it on one of the Instagram posts to advertise this talk, is everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing themselves.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it's the blame stuff, right? It's all their fault, their problem. And I'm not saying that you should lump all this responsibility on your plate that doesn't belong there. That is not what I'm saying. I'm not even saying like you need to take accountability for your part in this. I'm not saying that either. What I'm saying is focusing on where you have power, focusing on where you can create change. And often that's you and your immediate world.
Yeah. And in taking that perspective, it can be incredibly empowering, because this is what I can control.
Right.
Like I can control to an extent what's going on in my inner world and how I'm showing up for myself and for my day to day. There's a hell of a lot that's happening in the world that I have very little control over. And that is excruciating if I focus just on that. And in focusing on that, it's also giving my power away. Whereas if I'm focusing on me and what is in my control and working to cultivate love in myself so that I can come from a place of overflow in sharing that love with others, that gives me so much more hope and is so much more effective than doom scrolling on social media, which, don't get me wrong,
I love me a good cat video. I get it. Yeah, but I mean, like, you're totally... Oh, I lost it. The way that we position ourselves, I think when you hit on power, right, and giving our power away, the way that we position ourselves and our viewpoint, where we're looking, what we're paying attention to matters. And if we take our eye off what's out there for a few minutes, nothing gigantic is going to shift or change. It's going to be all right. Okay. It's a big world. I think sometimes it's easy to get wrapped up in all the details of all the horrific things that are going on in the world, and have for, centuries. Right. Yeah. And so for me, another trick is that I just pull way out and I go, yeah, like this, what's going on right now sucks and it's terrible. But in the grand scheme of things, this is not the first time terrible shit has happened. It's not going to be the last time, probably. And again, where you have power, focusing on where you have power and where you can create change. And it starts with you, right? I've seen so many examples of this over time. Because the people who I was 15 years ago is such a different version of human than I am right now. I mean, I've seen Facebook posts that I made from 15 years ago, and I'm embarrassed of myself. Like, I mean, honestly, I'm like, who is that asshole? Because I was kind of an asshole. I'm not going to lie. I said some mean stuff. I was a conservative. I was Republican. I was military veteran. I worked on weapons systems. I was in an all-male workforce for the most part. Often the only girl or one of the few females. It was tough. It was a tough world back then. And remember what I said about love in the beginning of this, right? Is if we feel loved and we feel safe, the world would be different. Well, I didn't feel loved because I was often told they didn't want me because I was a female, right? I didn't feel safe because I was constantly watching my back and making sure that I was getting picked on or, whatever was happening. So I was defensive all of the time. And so I wasn't nice and I was kind of mean. And I was talking to someone a few weeks ago and they were like, they didn't know me. It was our first time we met. And they said, oh, you're not a conservative like your dad. And I said, no, I'm a liberal and a feminist. And they were like, oh, shit. And I was like, yeah. And they were like, what changed? And I said, honestly, I started practicing Reiki. And I started spending time with people and caring about them. And I went to grad school and I started practicing yoga and meditation. And the more time I spent with people who were suffering, the more I understood what was missing in this world. Which I'm going to sound like a broken record by the end of this, but it's love. We need more love. And I will never, ever shut the fuck up about that because we need more love. And so for me, in the environments that I worked in, when I first started practicing Reiki, I was still teaching electronics in a nuclear power plant, the only female in maintenance training, right? Yeah. And everyone was like, what? And I was like, I know, it's weird, but it's so cool. And over time, more and more people I'm associated with that thought it was totally nuts have kind of come across to the lighter side. And I've seen it in clients that I work with, organizations that I work with. And I think what's really important is that when it comes to Reiki and even yoga and meditation, most of the organizations I worked with and the teachers I studied under or with, including myself, I tried really hard not to push it on anybody, right? Like I'm not pushing my love on people. I'm not forcing this podcast on anybody. You would just click off if you don't like it. It's fine. Click off. No, I'm kidding. Okay. But it's not a force. All I'm doing is being an example of what's important to me, sharing the work that I've done and how that shows up for me in my life. And then I'm allowing people to find their way, and I think like there is no better example of that when it comes to changing your communities and changing the world around you. Because every time that you care about yourself, focus on yourself, you give someone else permission to do the same thing. Mm-hmm. And so we don't even have to teach. We just can live by example. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be so complicated, like, yeah. I think I've told this story on another episode. I don't know if it was with you or not, but it was when I lived in Denver. I got a new job that was 30 minutes away and no traffic. And when there was traffic, I was on off I-25. It was north of Denver. I lived south of Denver. When there was traffic, it could be anywhere from 30 minutes to like an hour and a half. So I was late a lot. And the whole time I was driving to work, I'd be stressing out. I'd be like kicking myself. I should have left earlier, like blah, 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 blah. So FYI, that is not love. I was not being loving to myself, right? Calling myself names, blah, 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 all the way there. And I remember one day I came in and I was like, went to my boss, and I'm like, again, I'm so sorry. I'm late, blah, blah, blah. And she like kind of chuckled. And she's like, Adrian, she's like, you always get your work done. She's like, and if you're late, do you stay late? I'm like, well, of course. And she's like, I don't care when you get here. And I was like, what? She's like, I don't care. You always get your work done. If you're late, you stay late. You make sure your hours are good. You're good. She's like, don't stress. It's not worth it. And it changed my life. Like not even like just that drive. Oh my God, it made my drive to work so much more peaceful. And if I was late, I'm like, she doesn't care. I don't have to care. I can be late and it's no big deal. And it like completely changed my life. And then like it had like this ripple effect into other things I did, because I'd be running late and be like, wait, what's the worst that's going to happen if I'm late? Like someone's going to be waiting for me. That's true. But are they going to be like, oh, Adrian's such a loser. She's always late. No, they're going to be like, oh gosh, I was worried about you. I'm glad you're okay or whatever. And I can always apologize. So it's just the littlest things like that. If that boss hadn't said that, how much longer would it have taken me to figure out that lesson, to give myself that little bit of grace, and love?
Yeah. And how much would that daily stress at the beginning of your day affected you physically, psychologically, emotionally, interpersonally? Like, yeah, that's there's so much ripple out from that. That luckily we don't know what that would have been like if
alternate timeline. Adrian, her central nervous system is fried.
So stressed out.
Stressed.
Blood pressure through the roof.
Oh my God. That's like stroke at 40, Adrian. We don't know her.
But just think about that. Like that was a potential trajectory that you were on, that you shifted and are now here in this vibrant, alive, passionate timeline.
Right.
Because of that little nudge of love.
Yep. Because someone gave me permission, right? Like, I think we take that for granted. Like, one of the things I've tried for myself for the last few years is to stop saying, I'm sorry. But instead say, like, if I'm late, thank you for waiting for me. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your grace. I do apologize if I actually am like, sorry and need to make an apology. But I think especially women, we apologize all the time for like nothing. It's incredible. If you start paying attention, like just for a week, just pay attention to how much you say, oh, I'm sorry. And it might blow your mind. And so I've tried to stop doing that, and I've gotten pretty good. And now when other people say, I'm sorry, you say, no need to apologize, or there's nothing to apologize for. And I often will get like okay. And I'm like, seriously, I'm good. Like there's nothing to say you're sorry for, and that's the kind of stuff that I really think is radical. Yeah. Like radical, right? It doesn't have to be huge and big and whatever to create change. radical is wild and thorough and influential, but it can be super, super small. Super, super small. Like punk rock.
Not small, but
in comparison, the punk scene, the punk music scene, the amount of punk bands converted to like pop, right? Or even regular rock and roll is small, but it has made a huge difference in the world. Mm-hmm. And punk is all about radical ideation and radical hope. One of the reasons I always loved punk in high school is because it was very political and very intelligent, and also like, fuck this, we're not going to take this shit anymore, blah, blah, blah. And I always loved that. And, I shared this with you earlier. I saw a reel on Instagram of a drummer from a punk band. I can't remember who. I'm sorry, guys. But it's good old school 80s punk. And he was like, this is what we've been training for. Like, we're going to go out there and we're going to love everybody and we're going to change the world. And I was like, yes, punk rock. Let's do it. And it's these little things that make a radical change, and can give us that sense of radical hope.
Yeah. And all of those little daily things add up in such a profound way. And I appreciate you sharing your story of how much you've changed and how you identified as very conservative and very Republican and had very specific views. And over time, all of these little things shifted, right, that oriented you to center love, and that has affected how you show up politically. And I resonate in my own way with that story because I came from a very conservative family of origin, and have extended family members in particular who were very, very like evangelical Christian, very religious. And it was interesting, like looking back and, as Jung would say, tracing the red thread back, things that you can only see in retrospect. There were so many things that I experienced in those environments that just didn't really make sense to me and didn't really add up. Like, you're preaching God's love, but then you're saying, well, you have to fit XYZ mold in order to belong. And that was really confusing to me. And I had family members calling me a heathen at age 10 because they didn't like what I was wearing. Or they didn't like that I was so interested in art and not what they thought I should be interested in. Excuse me. And I meet people now and they are like, what do you mean? Like, you identified as a conservative, as a Republican, as a libertarian? Like, I struggled with it so much as a young person, because I wanted that belonging and acceptance from that community. And at the same time, I was experiencing the profound healing from Reiki, from all of these different healing modalities that come from indigenous wisdom traditions around the world, getting exposed to different professional trainings and learning about mental health and community and how important it is to truly love the folks that you are being in service to. And it was all of these little things over time that then all of a sudden added up in a way where I was like, that is not me. Like, I don't want to come from a place of conditional love or of trying to emphasize what is different about other people in order to prop myself up or make myself feel superior.
Mm-hmm.
It was honestly a gradual process of humility and of recognizing my own flaws and imperfections and falling in love with all of those parts that those environments previously had said were bad or wrong, and embracing them in myself.
Yeah.
And from that place, being able to genuinely show up and care and show acceptance and embrace folks who had similar differences and who had different differences, but just to genuinely care and see you are a full and complete human being who is alive and has breath in their lungs and is therefore worthy of being here and being respected. And so am I. And we can be flawed and still be deeply worthy.
Right. Or maybe not even be flawed and just be these uniquely shaped individuals, right? Yeah. And absolutely. And I will say, like, this is like the very beginning of us talking about self-exploration and getting to know ourselves. I mean, I've been, we'll say, doing the work for about 15 years now. So I started practicing Reiki. That's really what kicked it off for me. That was in 2013. So 12 years ago. And I felt like everything went hyperspeed after that. I mean, I had been to therapy before that. I'd done a little stuff, but I just wasn't ready. And learning Reiki, I don't know, it just shook something loose. It changed something for me. And I still am finding parts of myself to love, right? Like I was talking to my roommate about it the other day. I have a problem with dry humor. Like I don't get it a lot. It goes like right over my head. And like people who do it a lot, like my roommate, they'll say something and I'm like, oh, seriously? Like I take them 100% literal. It's so funny for me because I'm all about image and metaphor, but like I take it 100% literal. And then they like look at me and they're like, Adrian. And I'm like, what? And they'll say it again. And I'm like, I hurt you. I'm sorry, or whatever. And they're like, I'm totally kidding. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, don't do that to me. And I caught myself going, God, I'm so naive, or, I'm so stupid that I fall for this. And then I'm like, wait a minute. Am I naive? Is that the right word? Right? So like, this is an example of self-exploration. Is naive the right word? If I looked at myself, would I be like, yeah, Adrian's naive? I don't think so. I would not identify myself as naive. So is it that I'm literal? That's also a little strange because I do all kinds of art and whatever. And so instead of like labeling myself as, oh, I'm this as a negative thing, this is still in process. This is very new, you guys, are happening right now live. I'm thinking more, it's just, I just am not good with dry humor. I don't catch dry humor quickly or well. And that's it. Like I don't need a label. There doesn't have to be something wrong with me.
Right.
Because I don't catch dry humor, And so like by going through that exercise, and it's a practice because I still catch myself being like, oh, Adrian. And then I'm like, no. It's okay that you don't get that. You're like real smart and you know a lot of things. You don't have to do all the things good. It's like, it's fine. That eliminates one more piece of negative self-talk.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. That's such a great example. It's reminding me of example from my own life of a few years ago, I was in a professional relationship that the other person chose to terminate kind of out of the blue to me. And there were some very hurtful things that were said as a part of that process, blaming me, saying that I was a bad friend, many different things. And I took that in so personally, and I was like, oh my God, why do they think that I was a bad friend? What could I have done differently? And then it kind of swung around as I was in my internal process to, well, maybe I just can't like be friends with people in this same professional way. And like, maybe that's bad to mix these things. And maybe I was, being too naive, too trusting, being too caring, being too permissive of this person's violations of my boundaries and breakdown in communication, but also wanting to get curious about my own responsibility in that. So very layered, tangled.
The spirals are super easy, aren't they?
There's so much that gets packed in there. And I was working through it in a therapy session, and my practitioner was like, pause. Stop you right there. What I hear you saying is that you really care about this person. And the level of care that you express for this person and in general in the way that you show up in the world is really beautiful and pure. And I don't want this one relationship that went badly, that you were hurt by, to influence how you show up for your next friendship. Like that person doesn't get to have that power unless you give it to them. And it was such a radical shift in my mind also to value that I do care. And that's part of why sometimes things hurt as much as they hurt. But from that place of, oh, this is something that I value and that other people value, that I show up and that I care. And I don't want to stop caring. I don't want to stop showing up, even if that means that sometimes I get hurt.
Right. Yeah. Beautiful. Same. And I am so glad that you keep showing up that way, because I'm pretty sure that's why we're friends. I went through a really, really horrendous breakup in the last few years, which included a lot of betrayal. And one of the things that I've been really careful of is, did this damage my ability to trust? Am I bitter? Right? There were certain things that I was really worried about, because I care. And I am a very trusting person. I am very much the kind of person where it's until you give me a reason not to trust you, I'm probably going to trust you. And I'm probably going to help you out, because that's just who I am, right? Until you give me a reason not to. Until you give me a reason to slam a boundary in place, we're going to be okay. And I think that the work that I've done, exploring who I am and what's important to me, like you said, caring is part of who you are. It's one of your values. I think the more true to ourselves we can get through exploring these things, the easier it is for us to move through these challenging moments, right? I mean, that's the fancy term for it, but the stuff that sucks, the things that are hard, the stuff that hurts, the broken hearts, because no matter what type of a relationship, whether it's romantic or friendship or whatever, they're still relationships. They're still important to us. And when things like that go a little sideways, it can make us question ourselves, especially when shitty things are lobbed at us, right? And so, going back to that self-work, the more you know yourself, the easier it is for you to reflect and come out of it staying true to who you are, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And everything is relational. That is often lost in our culture. The US culture in particular, it is so hyper individualistic and becoming increasingly more so right now. Literally,
It hurts my soul. It's painful. Yeah.
it is painful because humans are by nature social creatures.
We need each other. Like, I hate to break it to y'all who don't think so. You're wrong. And we need, like, our physiology, our entire body is designed by nature to belong to each other. Like, that's how, like, how far down it goes. It's not just because we want to be friends. Like, our physiology is designed to be in community.
And the shift that we're seeing, or the acceleration of this shift that we're seeing in our culture of wanting to other and divide and marginalize and separate ourselves from other people in so many ways is going against our evolutionary biological core of what it is to be human.
It's going to make us sick.
It already has.
I know. Sicker, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I didn't want to cut you off. No? Okay. I was just having this conversation with someone earlier this week. I don't go down like conspiracy, like theory rabbit holes. You know, it's not my thing. However, I'm going to say, I don't think it's a conspiracy if it's real, right? So anyway, we were talking about this exact same thing, this like isolation and separation. The world is experiencing higher levels of anxiety and depression than it ever has, right? Mm-hmm. And when people go to get help for their anxiety and their depression, which, by the way, is a very common result from the nervous system feeling disconnected and separated from others. Okay, science. Mm-hmm. When they go to get help for this, or we talk to their doctor, more often than not, they are prescribed a pill. And all that pill does is dampen the symptoms. Doesn't solve the problem. Some amazing doctors out there are like, hey, you should probably get some therapy. Let's figure out what's going on with you, like psychologically, somatically, like what your human lived experience is like that's causing these symptoms. But too often they look at those symptoms as a cause, like an actual like thing, and they're not. They're symptoms. Anxiety and depression are symptoms of something not being right. And then they drug it away. Well, who benefits from that? Pharmaceutical companies. Pharmaceutical companies are the ones that make the money on all these damn pills that they're pushing, right? Often they're being handed out by physicians that aren't psychiatrists, who don't know much about mental health at all.
Yeah.
People are given doses that are incorrect, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, creating a world where people are separated from each other will make a world that's sick. Creating a world that's sick creates profit for people, right? Financial gain. And it sucks. Like I said, I don't feel like it's a conspiracy because it's true and it's actually happening. There's research, there's numbers, blah, 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 blah. However, here's some radical hope, you guys. You can make a difference, right? Like, this is the type of thing I think that can feel very overwhelming. For me, I see it happening so often in clients and friends and whatever. Oh yeah. Like, it's not, oh, you're on anxiety meds. Now it's like, oh, what kind are you on? Like, that's the conversation that's happening. And don't get me wrong. I'm not saying all meds are bad, you guys. Sometimes meds can be really helpful when we're in certain spots in our life and we need a little bit of help. Okay. They have their place 100%. But what I really want to invite you to do is think about these things as symptoms, not a disease. Okay. You're experiencing anxiety versus having anxiety.
Yeah.
You're experiencing depression versus having depression, or being depressed, or, being depressed versus I am depressed. I know it sounds like semantics, but it matters. It really, really matters the way that we talk about it. So I invite you to have some radical hope around this, because we can make a difference by creating community and talking to each other and reaching out.
Yes. Connection is an antidote to separation, to all of the symptoms that go along with separation. And, you brought up the examples of anxiety and depression as symptoms. And I want to add in some recent research that has been done about how social rejection, our bodies respond to it as literal, measurable physical pain. Like when we say we have heartache, we do have measurable pain in our bodies when we bump up against rejection from another human being or from a group of human beings. It is physically painful. And when there's even research that's talked about using the effect of Tylenol or Advil or Aleve, pain relievers, to lessen the pain levels of the physical pain levels that come with social rejection. And at the same time, the kind of unknown or the surprising result with that was not that made a difference, but that taking Tylenol also made you less empathetic and compassionate for others. It numbed your ability to connect. So yes, it lowered and started to numb your own physical pain manifesting social rejection, but it also prevented you from your full capacity to connect and empathize with another.
So that part of the research I had not heard. That's incredible, because in my PhD dissertation work, I had the research all about the pain, because it's the exact same pain receptors in the brain. The brain processes physical pain in the exact same space as it processes physical pain. It's neurological. Like, that's the way that we're built. So yes, it creates physical pain. I had read about pain relievers helping with social rejection and social pain, but I had not heard that part about it disconnecting us. But it makes sense. And another part of the research, similar vein, that I found was so interesting is, I think it's Panksepp. Anyway, it's a very old study. It was done a long time ago. And it was done on rats, because this is what's tough about psychology, right? Like, you can't break up a family to see how it impacts the kid. Like, that's unethical. So a lot of studies can't be done. They would try back in the day, and then they'd get in trouble, right? Because it's not ethical to treat people like that. So they did this study on rats, and basically what they found is that when they took baby rats away from their mother, their natural opioid levels would drop, and they would experience physical pain being removed from their mother. Now, if they were given back to their mother, their natural opioid levels would rise and the experience of pain would go away. However, they also could give those same baby rats unnatural opioids. Like, if we think about the ones we give humans, Vicodin, oxycodone, right? Percocet. If they gave them unnatural opioids, the rat would also stop experiencing pain and their opioid levels would regulate, right? So essentially curing loneliness and separation with opioids. So what's happening in the country for the last 10 to 15 years, an opioid crisis?
Yeah.
Maybe perhaps because we're freaking lonely, guys. So let's talk about connection. how do we connect? What does that look like, right? How do we share love with each other and connection? Because I'm going to tell you, it's easy to say it's not social media, right? Oh, God, the tones I use sometimes, I'm like, God, Adrian, that was a little harsh. Okay, but but it's not social media. That's not necessarily true. Social media, aka what you're watching us on right now, isn't all negative or bad, okay? But it's about community and connection. So like Cacky and I, we have this scrolling banner on this video right now that says, feel free to ask a question or comment because we'd love to hear from you. Because we really would. Like, we want to create community. We want to create connection, not just like talk at your face. So you can connect with others using social media. But what's important is that you're connecting with others. Yeah. A like on a post is not a connection. Even a comment may or may not be a connection. If you know the person in real life and you talk to them in other ways and you have other connections, then that would be more meaningful, right? But most of what people post on social media on their, whether it's Instagram or TikTok or Facebook, that's not real life. I mean, it's like my Instagram and Facebook, for the most part, they're my business page. Right. There's so much going on in my life that does not get posted there. And I might talk to someone I haven't talked to in a few months, and they're like, we're catching up, and I'm telling them things, and they're like, oh my God, I had no idea. I didn't see that on your Facebook. And I'm like, why would I put that on Facebook? And so it's important that we remember that what goes on the internet is this like little piece of us. Mm-hmm. Right? It's not the whole pie. Mm-hmm. So connecting with others through a phone call, which sounds crazy. And I'll tell you, I hate talking on the phone because I do it for work. It's my job. But I will schedule into my week 1 or 2 phone calls a week with a friend or someone I care about to create connection. I try to schedule at least 1 meeting a week, going out to coffee or lunch or dinner or something with someone I care about, because I want to create connection. Mm-hmm. And this is coming from someone that doesn't like to spend a lot of time out in the world doing social things. As weird as that might sound, it's true. But I know how important this is for me, right? Because I still do want to be connected to people. I just don't need to be going to parties and happy hours all the time. Yeah. So finding your way to connect. What do you think, Cacky? What are some ways you connect with community?
Yeah, I love those examples and how intentional you are about committing to scheduling those things on a weekly basis. That is really inspiring to me. And I'm thinking there's, this isn't an in-person, like obviously in-person connection it's different.
Because you get hugs.
Yeah. And you're looking directly into the eyes of this other person.
Yes.
That's how humans fall in love, is through the eyes. And I'm not just talking about romantic love, but like mm-hmm. this deep love of connection and being withness. And 2 examples that are coming to mind, and they're being a bit persistent, so I'm going to share them.
Yes. Psyche says, talk about me.
I for most of my life was a huge postcard sender.
I love postcards.
Right? See, right? Most people react to it. Like, it's so.
I know.
I've fallen out of the habit in recent years. I haven't sent as many postcards, but like it was a thing. And like,
I might steal this. I might steal your idea. I send note cards every once in a while, little notes, but postcards.
Yeah.
So easy.
Well, it's become harder to find postcards over the years. Like even traveling, and when I've tried to find postcards, you have to kind of like go out of your way now to find them. Mm-hmm. But I remember in undergrad was kind of like the peak of my postcard sending days. And I would send postcards, especially during the summer when all of my friends would go to various other places. We wouldn't be seeing each other as regularly. Yeah. And like it became a thing, particularly like people's moms would comment like, so excited whenever someone like gets your postcard. And I have very distinctive handwriting. It's very beautiful and very hard to read. So it became like a thing. So many people would reflect like, I made it a game of trying to read your postcard, walking in from the mailbox before I give it to my kid. Like it just is one of those things like it brings people so much joy. One, because what do you get in the mail these days?
Crap. Right. Like so much like random ad crap. Oh my God.
Or like maybe, you spend a little too much money and you have packages coming in from all these different places. But getting a postcard from someone who cares about you and took the time to pick out this postcard and to write it, like, oh my God, I love that. Like behind me, I have a suitcase here and I keep every postcard that someone has sent me, every card, like anything like that, because even when I can't physically see those people, because my community is all over the world, I have a tangible collection of notes, of photographs, of artwork that people have given me that maybe it's a little bit of a hoarding tendency, but I like to see it in a positive light where I have that resource to come back to. And I will say, I'm going to tell a story about you for a moment. Dr. Adrian came and stayed with me and my partner a few months ago. And my partner and I had left for work and she was leaving while we were at work. And she was trying to find something to leave us a note on. She couldn't find anything. So she got home and she mailed us a notebook that she wrote in it, like guest book, and wrote a beautiful note to us. And now every single person, every time they come in our home, we insist that they write a note, guest book. And so it's become like so fun because it's a tradition. Like once our guests leave, my partner and I will wait to like be both able to like read it together, and we take turns reading it to each other, and then we can always go back and see, like we had such a great time when Dr. Adrian came to visit, and we had such a great time when so-and-so stopped by, where it's another way of building that community and holding on to it and tending it in a way that keeps going, because I'm about words. I love words. So having those notes is really special to me. And the other thing that I was thinking of was to take time to learn the history of my own communities. Because yes, there are the real-time people in my life, but there's also so much that's available from the elders and the ancestors. You were talking about how in the grand scheme of things, a lot of what the challenges that we're experiencing personally and collectively, there's been so many iterations of this, and there's so many people who have survived or we wouldn't be here. So as a member of the queer community, taking time to learn about queer history and how incredibly resilient and strong and unified and community oriented and gorgeous these people are, and the level of love and life that they live and lived in their years as radical acts of resistance, just by being like, it is political to exist today. different identities more so than others. But showing up and living out loud your true authentic self is so powerful, and it can be really scary, and there can be very real risk that comes with doing that. And for me, I draw so much from the courage of the elders and the ancestors in the queer community, because we have survived, and we will continue to survive. Like, queer people are not going away just because you make it illegal to put an X on a passport. Like, that is not going to push people back in the closet. It's not going to make people straight just because you don't want to say the word gay. Like, that's not how it's ever been, and it's not how it's going to be moving forward. So how can we continue to tend to and learn from how folks have survived in the past in order to draw from that strength?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And well said. And I think, like you said, just being is that act of resistance, right? Yeah. And it's another opportunity to create community and to give people permission to be themselves. Mm-hmm. And it's a fucking courageous act of love for yourself and your community to show up in that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's actually a disservice to not show up.
Yep.
It's a disservice to yourself, and it's a disservice to others.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I care about you. I genuinely want to know who all of you is and continues to evolve and become. Like, that is really exciting. That is relational. That is dynamic. That is life. Mm-hmm. And I get it. We all have our personas, our masks, our roles, our curated content. Mm-hmm. That's part of our culture right now as well. Absolutely. But I've never been someone who's enjoyed small talk. I've always wanted to know the real person and what they're going through.
Yeah. I often surprise people because I do answer authentically.
Yeah.
And people will be like, "Oh, how was your trip?" And I'm like, "Oh, it was actually pretty terrible. Like, blah, 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 blah happened and this, that, and the other. So, it was stressful. I'm glad to be home." And people are like, "Oh." They don't really know how to react. And I'm like, I'm fine. Like, it's okay. No caretaking is required, but I'm going to tell you, what's up. And I would want other people to do the same. And again, I think that's setting an example and giving permission. And so, like, when we're talking about changing the world around us, how we show up and what we allow for ourselves goes out into every encounter we have, every person we talk to, every place that we walk into. I'm kind of weird outwardly compared to how I used to be, right? Yeah.
I love it.
Because, and this is something else, like in the last year, I've had quite a few conversations around, because I love fashion and I love weird fashion. I always have, but I was raised in a conservative household. And then I worked in corporate America, near the top for a long time. And so I had to be polished and pretty. And for me, the way I looked was always about putting others at ease and making sure they were comfortable. It was never about me. I was also raised in a very body conscious household. And even when I was thin, we're talking so thin, my ribs stuck out. I was too big because I have a large frame and I was 5'10". And so I was always too big no matter what. But the silhouette that I created with my clothing was always very important and had to be like absolute flat stomach, right? Things like that, things that are unnatural for women. And so over the last year, like I've started wearing weird stuff because I like it. And I will tell you what, for anyone that's like, I kind of want to wear weird shit too. Not once ever in the past year when I was wearing weird stuff did anyone go, oh my God, what are you wearing? No one. No one. Every single time, though, someone has given me a compliment. Every single time. Because I'm being true to who I am and showing up. And I will say I have gotten some looks like, well, isn't that interesting? Or, wow, that skirt. I love that. But it's almost like with a sense of awe and like, not jealousy, but like you can tell like, God, I would love to wear something like that. And it's like, do it. Like I have tutu skirts. I have 3 tutu skirts now and I love them so much. And I wear them whenever I want. It doesn't need to be a special occasion. I wear them with flip-flops. I wear them with boots. I wear them whenever the hell I want because I love them. And always compliments. I think we get so afraid that people are going to judge us for being who we are. When really, when you show up in the world who you really are, it is one of the most beautiful things you'll ever see. And you can see it in a person.
Yeah, I think, you're talking about punk rock, and I feel so strongly about the medicine that is at the core of each person really embracing and letting their own freak flag fly, because like that's also how we discover who we truly are. And the gift of getting to live your truth. Why would you waste a moment of your life self-censoring after you find who you are? It's very painful to live in a checkbox of who you think you have to be in order to, and then that's not real belonging. That's a transaction.
Yeah.
That is, I will present as heteronormative and whatever, and then you will accept me. I will be quiet. I will be this corporate version of professional. I will be blah, blah, blah. But you will not be if you are doing all of those things. And then you are giving away your life, your energy, your essence. And you're not even getting a genuine connection out of doing that. So showing up, being authentic, and then that's really how you become a magnet for your people, like for genuine, loving, fierce community.
Right.
Because they can't find you if you're hiding.
Right. Well, and here's the thing is that this all comes back to that fear I was talking about, right? This example keeps coming back to me. This is like the 3rd time it's pinged me tonight, so I'm just going to share it. I'm on dating apps right now. I'm single. And I was like, okay, fine. And I was filling one of them out and it had like political parties, right? So, but it was like conservative, moderate, apolitical, or liberal. And I was talking with my roommate and I was like, well, I guess I'm a moderate. And he laughed and he goes, Adrian, you're liberal. And I was like, no. And he's like, yes. And I really had to think about it. And I'm like, oh, fuck, I am. Like, I have swung that hard. Like, I am a liberal now. Because I'm like, the things I believe in, I don't think they were considered liberal 5, 6, 10 years ago, right? Awesome. And like now it's like it is radical to love everybody, which is like blows my mind. But yeah, so I marked liberal. I'm in the middle of Missouri. Do you know how many men would mark liberal on a dating app? Okay, so I'll tell you not a lot. However, like once I got past the initial, because there was this moment of fear, right? And I didn't call it that. And I'm telling this story because I think it's really important for us to pay attention to how it shows up. Mm-hmm. Because through introspection and digging into it, I was like, oh yeah, like I'm afraid that I won't find someone to go on a date with because of my political affiliation or my I hate that it's even political, because I love everybody. I won't be able to go on a date. You know, it's crazy. But I had that moment, and then I had to go, no, like, do I actually want to date somebody that believes that? That would be like, oh, you love everybody? Well, I think you're a loser. I wouldn't want to date someone like that. Right. So I did it. I like went all the way. I not only checked that box, but I made a bunch of comments. So there was no question about the fact that I love everyone and I accept everyone for who they are. And if you're not okay with that, don't talk to me. Don't write me. Like, I was very direct. And I'll tell you what, it's awesome. My dating pool is way smaller, but instead of sorting through hundreds and hundreds of these profiles that I'm not ever going to connect with, right? There's like 20 to 30. That's awesome. It's almost like real life, right? Because these things aren't. I mean, they're just a bunch of pictures of people. But I was afraid. And I want to point that out because, you know, we can sit here and talk from a place of theory, and even from a place of like, again, I've been doing the work or whatever for like, you know, almost 15 years. And I still end up in these spots where I get snagged. And I might not have even noticed if my roommate hadn't called me out, right? This stuff can be easy to understand or simple to understand, but it's not always easy. We have so much cultural conditioning. And the need to belong, kind of like where we started in the very beginning of tonight's show. The need to belong is physiologically built into us. So this stuff happens at the unconscious level, you guys. Like, it's not even a conscious thing that's happening. And so slowing down, getting reflection from our peers, right? Our friends and our colleagues. These kinds of things are really important to help us figure out who we really are and to help us show up as that person. Because we might figure it out and still be too afraid to come forward. Yeah. You know?
And adding to that, it's not a linear process. Like there continues to be layers, both of self-discovery and environments change. I remember 6-7 years ago when I started teaching in academia, I was really nervous to name my identities in a classroom. And yet I was teaching curriculum where that was what I was asking my students to do. So I, with a lump in my throat, started showing up and sharing a variety of different experiences. And it got easier over time. And recently it's gotten nerve-wracking again to name some of these identities that it's part of my lived experience. It's part of who I am. It's part of how I move through the world. And yet I don't know who I'm speaking to all the time. I don't know if it's going to upset someone that I share that I have invisible chronic illness, or if someone's going to be mad that I own that I'm a gun violence survivor, even though these are my identities. It has nothing to do with them. It's just that I'm sharing parts of my lived experience so that I can be authentic in a relational conversation about who they are coming in to doing this work. So it has been really interesting to bump up against that in myself again. And I feel incredibly fortunate to work with the student populations that I work with, because they are so brave and so unapologetic in being authentic in who they are. And it inspires me, and it calls forward my truth in a way where they're showing up and they are bringing it.
I love it so much. I love it so much.
Too. Like I can't then censor myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have to meet them where they are. And again, it's that way that we nurture each other by being real.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to take a minute. We've been going at it now for an hour and 20 minutes. By the way, this is the longest we've done a show before anybody watching. So this is high fives for us all around. Okay, boom, 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 boom. So we did have a comment. It's from my dear friend Trisha. She says, love this. We love you, Trisha. Thank you so much for joining us. We're definitely different generations. This is great.
I learned this from my students. This is not my generation.
Oh my God. And I'm just going to say, for anyone watching, we've had quite a few people come on tonight, which is fantastic. Please feel free to share your thoughts. Ask us a question, anything you want. Take advantage of our presence. We're here for you. Just type it right into the comment section and we will respond to anything you'd like. I know sometimes it can be a little intimidating, or it's like, I've heard people tell me, I just like listening to you talk, which is cool too. Like, keep showing up. We love it. But I just want to make sure that you guys know, like, this is an opportunity for you. Like, we really are trying to move into community. So anything you want to share, any questions you have, please feel free. We appreciate you and we appreciate your presence. And in addition to that, with that being said, let's get into some practical stuff for our last 40 minutes. Like, we've touched on practical things, right? Like the postcards, scheduling phone calls for creating community. But I really love to take theory and make it practical so that people can do the work. And so I'll start with a conversation that I had with a client recently around how do you show up as love, right? Because that's one of the things I say all the time. I've been saying this for years to clients, students, etc., myself, because most of this is things I learned myself and then I share with the world because I'm a teacher. Every single day that you wake up, you get the opportunity to choose who you're going to be in the world. You get that. And it's an opportunity. It's a gift. Every single day is a gift. Sometimes it's hard to remember that, especially when life is tough, right? But even, and especially when life is tough, you get the opportunity to choose how you're going to show up. And in this conversation I had with my client recently, we were talking about all the conflict that's going on in the world and how difficult everything is. And really struggling to figure out how to connect, how to show up, who to be, et cetera, et cetera. And I shared with her that in my darkest times, when things are the hardest for me, what I've come to do is just choose love. Just choose to be love. And, there was a thing going around, I don't even know how long now, 15, 20 years, where it was like, what would Jesus do? Remember that? Everyone's wearing little WWJD bracelets and all that good stuff. For me, it's what would love do? What would love look like in this situation? How would love respond to this? And when I say love, I'm not talking romantic love. I'm not talking, love everybody and be kind all the time to every person and give everyone what they want. That's not love. Okay. And I think it's really important. Like, I used to teach my leadership students this. There's a difference between being nice and being kind. because we can easily placate people and just tell them whatever they want to hear. And that's being nice. But that's not loving and it's not kind. Sometimes love is hard. Sometimes love also comes in alignment with feelings like disappointment, frustration, anger, and also still love, right? Love applies, when I use the term love, be love, choose love, that applies to you and yourself, as well as the people and the environment around you. So just because you're choosing love doesn't mean that you just submit and you accept everything the way that it is. That is absolutely not what it means. Sometimes, go ahead.
I was just going to say, being a doormat is not loving.
Correct. Not to you and not to the people you're letting walk all over you either. True love, choosing love, is one of the most courageous ways to move into the world. Normally, daily basis stuff, but now even more so. Choosing love, choosing to show up as love is so brave and so difficult, and yet so simple, right? The most difficult part in my experience, like personally, is washing away other people's expectations of how I'm supposed to show up, expectations that have become embedded within me, right? Not just the stuff that people are saying to me right now, but all the cultural conditioning. Because I will tell you, I grew up in a competitive household, hyper individualistic on one side of the family. I'm the oldest of 6 kids. I was taught to not care for myself and to only take care of others, and yet no one will help you. So you better figure out your own shit. That's how I was raised. So choosing to love instead of be in competition is wild. Like, it is the most radical thought for me. And so really, taking a minute with that question, what would love do? It takes me some time. Like, in all practical, like, I have journaled on stuff. This is what's going on in my life. I'm totally lost. What would love do right now? And I take my time with it. So yes, it sounds simple, but it's not easy. It takes a lot of courage. It can be very difficult. I've made choices based on love that every single person I knew was like, what are you doing? But I'll tell you what, I don't regret them, because I know deep down inside I did something that came from my heart, right? And was the right thing for me. So I think it's really important to call that out, because choosing love is not weakness. It is not the easy way out. It is one of the most difficult things I have ever done in my life, but the most rewarding. Oh my God. It has given me some of the most beautiful experiences I've ever had.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that, and for emphasizing the simple but not easy piece of it. Because there's so much that can be really challenging about love. And that's also part of what makes it so worth it. I'm thinking more about what the difference between nice and kind that you were sharing. And part of what's coming up for me is that a practical piece of radical self-love is having boundaries.
Yes. Boundaries are love.
Boundaries are love. Yes. Boundaries of, this is what I'm willing to accept, the type of behavior I'm willing to be around, the types of conversations I'm willing to partake in. And this is what I'm not willing to be a part of or a party to. And it's not okay to treat me that way. It's not okay to treat people I care about that way. And we're going to need to have a conversation if if this behavior continues, about how are we going to navigate this, because this isn't working.
Mm-hmm.
That is a incredibly loving thing to do, and it takes so much maturity and vulnerability,
Mm-hmm.
because just because you have a boundary doesn't mean that someone has to respect that boundary.
Yeah, no shit. Seriously. Yeah, sorry.
Which is often lost in the pop psych version of boundary.
Right? Just set a boundary and everything will be fine.
Yeah. So there's a lot that goes into that, and it can take a lot of energy, and it is often an imperfect dialogue and practice. And we need that. And one of the examples, we're talking a lot about activism and social justice, and I am incredibly passionate about this, and that has shown up in my actions in different ways over the last 15 years in particular. And one of the things that I discovered was that there are some pieces of social justice that I am deeply, on a core level, so passionate about. And it was hurting me. It was causing me harm to be on the front lines using my voice in those spaces. So I shared that I'm a gun violence survivor. When I first had that experience, I was so loud and so intentional about bringing awareness to this issue, advocating for common sense gun reform, all of lobbying, doing the most about it. And I had a conversation with a friend who just wanted to check in and was like, hey, you're talking about this a lot. Are you okay? Not in a this is weird, stop doing this, but you're putting a lot of energy into this, and you are not you're neglecting other parts of your life as a result. Mm-hmm. Can we just check in and see, is there anything, what she asked was, is there anything that I can do to support you in this? Mm-hmm. And I was like, it's not all on me. I'm not the only person who's working on this issue. And actually, it is really painful for me to be writing those letters and doing those posts over and over and over again. And so I've gotten into the practice of being very discerning of when do I want to post this from a place where it is an authentic, inspired response, and when am I doing this out of reaction?
Right.
And I had a conversation with another friend about this practice, and she was like, you know what? I've already written letters and made phone calls with you on this issue. How about next time a mass shooting happens, you reach out to me and I will send that letter for you.
Oh, that's so kind.
And so I was able to have healthy boundaries, mm-hmm. and to have that conversation at a point when I was not triggered, mm-hmm. and could be kind and loving to myself to show up
right.
in a meaningful way. And we together were able to figure out a way where my voice and my passion could be heard, but in a way that wasn't going to cause me active harm.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I share that a lot with my students when we're talking about community care and what does it mean to be part of a a profession, a caring profession.
Mm-hmm.
How are you showing up and being loving to yourself so that you can continue to do this work?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And those are boundaries that you set for yourself, which I think also gets missed a lot in the whole pop psychology talk on boundaries. Boundaries aren't about building up walls around you to keep the world out.
Yeah.
Boundaries are about creating an experience that fits you.
Yeah.
Right. Including boundaries for yourself and things you need to put in place for you, not just moderating other people's behavior around you. Boundaries are about you and what you'll tolerate. And thank you for sharing that, Cacky, by the way. I really want to just take it kind of like all the way back to how we figure this kind of stuff out, right? Because that's another thing is boundaries. We talk about this in a lot of our episodes, buzzwords. Boundaries that's a great buzzword. But what do you even need boundaries around or for? And how do you figure that out? What kind of love do you need? And how do you show that to yourself, right? Or how do you create an environment, a loving environment for yourself? What does that look like? It all, in my opinion, starts with getting curious about who you are. What brings you joy? What makes you feel good? What doesn't feel good? And, I often say, don't label things as good or bad.
Yeah.
Even though I just used the word good like 6 times. I'm still learning, people. It's a practice. But it's not about things being good or bad, but it's about I want more of this in my life, or I want less of this in my life, or I want none of this in my life. I want this in my life every minute of every day, right? What fulfills you and makes you feel good, and what drains you and makes you feel icky. And the only way we can figure that out is by spending time getting to know ourselves. I think the easy go-to is always journaling, but that's not for everybody, and that's okay. You don't have to journal. You can just think about it. There's times where I think I've already talked about it tonight a few times, where I'll say something and I pause and I go, what do you think you meant by that, Adrian? Is that really the way that you want to talk to yourself? And I'll also say that being able to start that conversation with myself took years, took a long time. In the beginning, these types of things won't be easy or natural for you, most likely. And that's okay. That's normal. So give yourself some grace. But as many of my clients would tell you, it becomes second nature over time. Am I the weirdo that talks to herself a lot at the grocery store? Yes. Maybe that turns out to be you too. I don't know. We could do it together. It'll be fun. But I ask myself questions all the time about the way I talk to myself, the words that I use, and then also the way I'm looking at the world, because the way we view the world is really important too. We see what we look at. Okay. So if you are pointing out all the negative, horrible things in the world, that's what you're going to see.
Confirmation bias, baby.
100%. 100%. So it's really important. When I said not only yourself, the things you think, blah, 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 but your environment. Part of your environment is the news that you absorb, the people you hang out with, and the stuff they talk about. So I met someone new a few weeks ago. It was a date. I'll just say it was a date. I went on a date. We didn't keep seeing each other. We went on a date. But anyway, he was telling me that he worked in this place where everyone was really, really negative and basically talked shit about other people all day long. And I was like, he's telling me all this, and he obviously is like in a dark cloud, right? Yeah. And I'm like across the table from him, just like, this is so heavy. Whoa. And I was like, man, you got to get out of there. And he's like, yeah, I know, but, and I'm like, no, like you got to get out of there. Like, if you care about yourself at all, like you got to get out of there. And we really underestimate how much what's around us impacts us. It will start to get to you. It's happened to me at jobs before. It will start to get to you. When I go to the VA and they have news on all the televisions is all news. And it's like mainstream news. I don't care even what they're talking about, but just the voice of the answer. I'm just like, so harsh. Make it stop. So I bring earbuds and I'll listen to music while I wait for my medical appointments sometimes, because I know that I can't handle that. It messes with me, So the way I learned that is from sitting in that room, the waiting room at the VA, and noticing that I was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Paying attention.
Yeah. Thank you for saying learning and practice as a part of this. Yes. Because there was, at first I was like, oh yeah, you like, don't be afraid to make mistakes. But it's not even like, let's throw out the label of mistake. Like, it is a learning experience if you learn from it.
Yep.
And
like science.
Yeah, it is a learning experience.
Yeah.
And so I was even thinking about the example that I shared about my own activism. It took me months to realize that through the loving reflections of these conversations with incredible women in my life. But part of what made it so hard for me to see was that so many people were applauding me for my voice. And were like, this is incredible. You're doing all of this good work. It's so meaningful. You're making such a big difference in doing this. And I heard that and I was like, okay, keep going, keep going. And I didn't pause to see how gut-wrenching it was for me every time that I poured myself out in that way. And I'm a big personal sharer in a lot of ways. That has been part of my process and part of how I show up in the world and in relationship. But it was landing in my body differently every time I was writing these letters, making these public outcries. And it took time for me to realize, yeah, other people's praise that I'm doing the right thing does not mean that how it's affecting me is loving or kind to me anymore.
Yep. Absolutely. Like how many times, I'm not going to say how many times have I beat the living crap out of myself physically, mentally, emotionally, intellectually, because I was getting praised for it. I was an athlete. I literally was praised for beating up my body, right? Yeah, and we don't always take the time, because as long as someone's saying, good job, I'm proud of you, I mean, this speaks to much deeper wounding, but again, goes back to that fear. Will they still love me if I stop doing X, Y, Z?
And it's that external voice, right? Because like there's been many times where I have made a loving choice to be kind to my body and rest. And there's a voice in the back of my head from when I was younger, and people saying, you're just doing that for attention. You're being lazy. Get off your ass and do something with your life. Like whatever, like all of those narratives where again, that isn't my truth. I am doing what's loving for me. Yeah. But from the outside, there's all of these projections. Oftentimes it's other people's own shit that then is coming forward, whether that's the praise or whether that's the put downs. It takes so much discernment and clarity to bracket that and get curious, but what is this really like for me?
Right. Well, and if it starts early, right? If it's developmental, then you're unpacked, like it's been absorbed and you're having to like get it out, to allow that to be.
Yeah.
Just last night, I was justifying binge watching a show on a Saturday when I literally have worked every single day this week for probably 8 to 10 hours. I've written every single day. I'm finishing up Reiki Master manual. I'm almost done, but I've written every single day. I'm working on a research project. I've been working, and I worked all day today, including this, right? And so like last night, I'm like, God, I feel like I should go do something. And my process, whenever I have that moment of you're just sitting on the couch, right? And I'll be like, it's okay if I'm lazy. One, is that the right word? Is that the word you want to use? And I still am having this conversation with myself. I have it all the time. I'm getting better, but I'm like, no, I'm not being lazy. I'm enjoying not being productive because tomorrow I'm working all day long. And this is like my only day off this week. And I even worked yesterday morning. I took my dogs to dog training, which is not fun. It's work. So, like I said, and like you've said, it's a practice. And it is, it's lifelong, people. You think you've gotten it and you're like, yeah, I'm good. But the more you look, the more you see. And, I hate to say that sometimes because it can seem like that's daunting, but it's not. It's awesome. It's awesome because in the last month, I have had so many opportunities for gratitude in my life. And I love my life. I have built the most awesome life. I am so madly in love with it that it's kind of criminal. And it didn't used to be that way. I had to work really hard for this. And a big part of that is doing a lot of the things that I'm sharing tonight. All starting with self-awareness, figuring out who I am and continuing to do so, right? I'm still figuring myself out. And now the only difference is in the beginning, it was like, oh, shit. Oh, gosh, that too. Oh, all this big stuff to deal with, right? Mm-hmm. Now it's the little stuff, the nuanced stuff. And it's more like a fun exploration. It's not always fun, but an exploration versus like a scary trip through a forest. I don't know. But it continues and you're going to keep learning and raising your awareness, but it's all for great things, like that's how we get to a place where we can be living the life that supports the most authentic version of us, which we all deserve. We all deserve that 100%.
I'm going to say something radical right now.
Do it. Get radical.
Whether you do the work or you don't, you are worthy of love.
Oh, fuck yes. Fuck yes. Always.
Which, again, just like stripping back the layers of conditioning, whether that's like my own developmental stuff, but also culturally. Like that is such a profound message in capitalism is you have to do XYZ, be XYZ productive, have this job, have this relationship, have this level of like all of these conditions in order to be worthy of being loved, of belonging. And none of that is true. Like you are here. You have breath in your lungs. You are profoundly worthy of love.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you so much for saying it exactly like that. The work makes it easier, I think, for you to love yourself. But whether you do any kind of work or not, no matter who you are always worthy of being loved. Absolutely. Whether or not someone's cheering for you and telling you how proud they are, doesn't matter. You're
I'm
always
telling you right now.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Me too. We're both telling you. You are worthy of being loved. Every one of you who is listening, watching, and then you can tell all the people you know. We're just going to spread this love chain all over the world. Yep. And it is radical. It is. You know, like I remember the first time my therapist told me that. Oh my God, I cried. I cried and I was like, I'm going to cry right now. And I was just like, huh, I guess I never really thought about it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's true. I mean, look at any fucking magazine cover, right? Women's Health, I mean, Glamour, Cosmo, I mean, any of that. Men's Health too. Men get it too, right? How to do this, how to get better at this, how to do better at this, blah, 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 blah. It's all, you know, about what you have to do to be loved. And it's such bullshit. Honestly, it makes me really mad. I'm not going to lie. Like, when I see people, because in my opinion, like those types of stories, that's mean. It's just mean. And I hate when people are treated like that or taught to felt that or that they aren't worthy of love or that they have to be X, Y, and Z for people to love them. Like, it makes me mad. Because I just want to love them so hard and be like, you're perfect exactly as you are.
Right.
Because you are, you know, and even if you want to change things, that's cool. You can change stuff, but you can want to change and also accept where you're at. You can want to change and still love who you are.
Yes. Yes. And even this change is, we're talking about radical love, but radical change doesn't happen all at once. So even this message of you are worthy of love, you are loved, you are love. If that is hard to hear and to take in, what might it be like to let in that message just the right amount for you in this moment? So if that is 1% or 0.001%, just see what that's like, just to take that in just a little bit. And then if it is of interest to you, maybe explore continuing to invite that practice into your life on a regular basis, letting in 1% of that possibility that you are worthy of love, and see how that affects you physiologically, energetically, social, emotionally, like all of it. And allow that to become a little string of pearls that you can continue to add to and see what happens next.
Yep. And in that same vein, just like I said earlier, we see what we look at, right? So like I would invite anyone listening to this, once a day, find something you love about yourself. And it could be something simple, like I love the fact that I make my coffee in a way I enjoy every day. Right? I love the way I sign my name. I love the way that so-and-so smiles when I say hello to them. I love how I care for others. Whatever it might be. But just noticing little things that you love about yourself. Because the more you look at it, the more you'll see all of the parts of you that are lovable, which is all of them, right? But it'll just allow that to grow and allow you to more fully sit into it. Because when you're able to love yourself, that's when you will find that it's easier to love others. When you accept yourself wholly, the parts that are icky and scary, as well as the parts that are amazing and wonderful, the easier it will be for you to love and accept the same thing in others. So just bringing it on home, guys. Everything starts with you. Everything starts with you. You have the power to help create the world that you want to live in. You have the power to make this place a place of love. You know, I hear defeatists say, well, human beings are just that way. Well, you know what? I'm a human being and I'm not that way. I know a lot of fucking human beings that aren't that way. I'll tell you right now. And if more of us human beings decided not to be that way, the world would be a very different place. We have the power to do that. You just have to make that choice with that opportunity you get every single day, how you're going to show up.
Mm-hmm. Every single moment.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah. A couple of questions that I came up with for my client this week was, how can I be a better expression of love today? How can I be love? Right? And then, like I said, the simple one, what would love do in this situation?
Mm-hmm.
And if that's too mushy for you right off the gate, that's okay. But take a second and be like, who do I want to be today? Just taking a moment to ask that question empowers you to recognize that you get to choose. You get to choose how you're going to show up,
Mm-hmm.
which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely awesome.
Mm.
Yeah. Right? Gosh. Oh, love. All right. We are just about done with tonight's show. It's been almost 2 hours. Cacky, you're a rock star. Thank you for showing up, bringing the love from all the angles. I appreciate you so much, as always, and I appreciate every single person who tuned in tonight, who shared some space with us. I love you guys all very, very much. Even the ones I don't know personally. I do. I love you. Sorry. It's just what it is. And yeah, if you enjoyed it, please share with others. We'll be coming together the fourth Sunday of every month with a different topic, me and Dr. Cacky. The in-between weeks will be a shorter podcast episode, just me, and it won't be live. It'll be on Spotify and YouTube. But every fourth Sunday, we're going to do a 2-hour live, me and Dr. Cacky. And we just, would love for you to show up, to join us. And you can always submit questions in advance or suggestions for topics. We're open to that.
And this is a way to be in community and connection, y'all. Like, we want to hear from you. Like, yes. Drop a comment, ask a question. Yes. I want to hear your feedback, how this lands with you, and where you want to go from here. What's on your heart. So please, we know you're a part of our community, but we want you even more involved.
Let's be an active community.
Yes.
Active. Seriously, if there's anything you guys want us to talk about, I mean, if you go through Energetic Psyche's podcast from last year, it's on YouTube and Spotify, and you can find them on Facebook, but YouTube and Spotify is easier. You can scroll through all the topic. If there's any topic that you were like, oh man, I wish they would talk more about this, or if you had any specific questions, like, feel free to send them to either one of us in a direct message on Instagram or Facebook. If you know us, send us a text, email, whatever. We're easy. You could even put it in a comment on this Facebook video, on the Facebook video or YouTube. We'll find it. We're good like that. We can read good. And we'll take it under advisement for a future show, for sure. But yeah. All right. Well, I think we're signing off. We're feeling done, feeling good. Love, all the love.
Lots of love.
Remember, love rules the world. You have the power to change the world. You have the power to make the world a better place. I believe in you, every single one of you. And Elliot, we love you too. Elliot said, I love this. Thank you for sharing and chatting with us.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here and for being love.
Yes. All right. Bye. See you next month.